All right, welcome everyone to the 2026 Spring Election School Board Candidate Forum. I'm Will Nimmo from Monona Community Media, and tonight we have our candidate forum with our three candidates, and it will be moderated by Suzanne Peranto from the League of Women Voters of Dane County. And Suzanne will go ahead and give us the overall guidelines and what's going to happen tonight. Suzanne?
Thank you, Will. Good evening and welcome. I am Suzanne Peranto from the League of Women Voters in Dane County, and I will be your moderator tonight. Monona Community Media is co-sponsoring this forum, and will be our timer. Thank you for attending. Please check that your phones are off or on vibrate before we start. Thank you. The election is April 7th. Voters will choose two of the three candidates here tonight, as well as a new Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice. The candidates are Rochelle Miller, Nicole Schoenbeck-Kloss, and Elizabeth Cook. Questions were submitted by the community in advance. Thank you to all those who submitted questions. They were very thoughtful, and we will ask as many as possible in the time frame that we're allotted. The candidates are seated in order of how they appear on the ballot. We will start, each candidate will have a minute and a half for opening statements, a minute and a half to answer questions, and a minute and a half for closing remarks. And again, we will continue to ask questions until we run out of time. Please only respond to the questions being asked. Please answer the questions to the audience rather than to each other. Please follow the minute and a half as much as possible. And again, the minutes are shown on the projector on the wall. We will start with Elizabeth with your opening statement. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Suzanne and League of Women Voters, for having us. Thank you, Will, and the Monona Community Media team. Those of you watching here in person and watching online, I really appreciate it. My name is Elizabeth Cook. I am running for re-election of the school board. I was first elected in April of 2020, so right at the beginning of COVID. A little bit about me, just sort of by way of background. I'm a parent of two Monona Grove students. I lived in Cottage Grove for a little over a decade, and I've lived in Monona for about a year and a half. I am a education policy wonk and expert by profession. I'm a school psychologist. I worked at the local, national, and state level around all things related to school policies and systems change. So school mental health, school nutrition, physical activity, attendance. It's kind of the wheelhouse and places and spaces where I like to be. And I am seeking re-election because, if I'm being honest, I love the work. If you ever engage with me or watch me at school board meetings, I love being on the school board. I love thinking about governance. I love thinking about how we can strengthen our community and collaborate with our families, our staff, our parents, to make a thriving school community. And I'm really excited to continue to lead the work here for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Rochelle, you are next.
Oh, I'm up, okay.
Oh, didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. Hi, I'm Rochelle Miller. I'm a mom of two boys. One is a recent graduate of MG and the other one is currently a junior. Both kids have attended schools within Monona Grove District throughout their entire academic careers. I have a background in education and have taught students ranging from preschool to adults in both private and public schools, as well as substitute teaching and summer school teacher and volunteer at Winnqua for about 8 years. I strongly support public education and understand the long-lasting impact it has on students and future generations. Nearly 3 years ago, I was elected to the Monona Grove School Board. Currently, I serve as Vice President and Chair of TLE, Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee, in addition to being a member of the Finance and Operation Committee and the Policy Committee. It has been a great honor to serve in this capacity. Over the past 3 years, the board has faced numerous challenges, including hiring a new superintendent, addressing budgetary issues, and improving student test scores, and making various other decisions that significantly affect the lives of many individuals. I take these responsibilities seriously and always strive to make informed decisions based on data and feedback from the community to ensure the best outcome for the district and its residents. Listening to your perspective and stories has helped me better represent you in this role and help me better serve the community at large.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Nicole?
Hi. Yes, thank you all for organizing this tonight. I'm Nicole Schoenbeck-Kloss, and I've been a resident of Monona for a little over 6 years now, and before that I was in Cosgrove for about 6 years. I have 3 children in our district schools. I participate in our community through volunteer events, largely youth sports, volunteering, and Girl Scout volunteering. And I have a background as an engineer that gives me an analytical lens to bring to our decision-making for the district in the future, if I am elected. I'm running for school board because I believe the future of our schools depends on thoughtful long-term decisions, and my experience with complex budgets, projects, and long-term planning could benefit that. Through my work as an engineer, I've been trained to ask questions, look at data carefully, and think about risks and trade-offs before making decisions. I hope to bring a data-centered approach to the board to help ensure that our district makes decisions that support our students and staff today while staying sustainable and strong for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So we're going to move along to question number 1. What are your priorities for the district in the coming year? And the first person to answer is Nicole Schoenbeck-Kloss.
So I think one of the big things on everyone's mind is our financial situation. There's a lot of decisions we have to make our budget work and continue supporting our students going forward. So the priorities really are all the decisions that feed into that in terms of weighing each financial decision in terms of what it brings to us as a benefit, and working through the ways we can not only support our students, but continue to retain our staff and have a lot of stability. I think that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Rochelle, you're next.
Oh, I knew I was going to be next. I agree with Nicole with our fiscal responsibility to our communities and our schools, as well as keeping front of mind retaining high-quality teachers and support staff. That's a major priority because we can't do the work without excellent teachers and staff to help make sure that kids are able to thrive. And also planning budgetarily how we can be healthy now and into the future. And so then looking at data and information about how we can best do that, knowing that currently our state doesn't necessarily give us what they originally committed to. So we do have some tough decisions. And then also, when it comes to our students, making sure that our teachers are well supported, are well trained, and making sure our students are able to have access to the best education so we can continue to see our student academic scores increase and hopefully have really safe communities within our schools where people feel comfortable and can learn.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah. So I think there are a number of priorities that are important to me and that we've really, particularly over the last 2 years since we've transitioned into new leadership, have really been able to stay laser focused on. One is around increasing our academic achievement. And so we have watched, and this is not unique to Monona Grove, this is true for all districts writ large across the nation. We've seen kind of coming out of the pandemic, we've seen decreases or stagnation in student achievement. And this is something that we've really focused on at Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee and the board at large around making sure that we have high quality instructional materials well-trained, and high-quality staff in front of students every day to be able to move the needle on those things. And we have seen results there. So if you look at our last several report cards, we can see those trends, particularly at the middle school, which has been an area of focus for a while. I think sustainable and competitive staff wages is another one. We've talked and committed to the Monona Grove Education Association, MGEA, that we will get staff to the 75th percentile of our Dane County comparables. It's incredibly important for us to do that to retain and recruit good staff. And then finally, financial stability and long-term sustainability, which again, we're making progress towards, but we have a lot of work to go there. So those are the three main priorities, I would say, that we need to keep our foot on the gas for the next several cycles of the school board.
Thank you. Question number 2. How will your decisions as a school board member address the different needs of individual students? We will start with Rochelle.
Oh, I knew it was going to be first. So we do have some new folks that are running our curriculum and instruction. This last year we had new folks, Rob Myers and Angie Fassel, and so it's kind of fresh new eyes looking at how we are using our instruction, how are we supporting our teachers, and really starting to identify the unique learning needs of each student and finding ways within the school day to make sure that we're getting the right instruction for those students while they're in our building. So it's kind of a lot of different things going on within the curriculum to address that, and then having a lot of evaluations every 100 days to seeing what we end up, where we're at and what we need to tweak and change while we're collecting data to know what's working and what's not, so we can actually find what the kids are missing to make sure we can fill that need.
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, absolutely. How will your decisions as a school board member address the different needs of individual students?
So we definitely need to consider those specific needs across, not just, there's kind of two big buckets in my mind, and potentially there's more as well. We've got the achievement of our students academically, as well as their outcomes from a social emotional standpoint. I really want to prioritize decisions that look at not just our academics, but our whole child outcomes and how we progress to have not just smart students as they graduate high school in the end, but also ones that are well equipped to handle life in the world and employment in the future. And that looks a little bit different for different groups. We've got, whether it's higher achieving students, ones that need additional support or special education, each kind of needs its own needs. Each has its unique requirements in order to support them, and we need to talk frequently with the staff in the building to make sure that they have the tools they need to support the students, because they're the ones seeing where a kid is actually struggling and what outcomes could have the biggest difference for them. So a lot of communication is how I would address that. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so the board has a really important role here, and it comes on a couple of different angles. And so one of the things that we do is that we approve and set curriculum. And so we have a teaching, learning, and equity committee. I had the privilege of chairing that for a number of years prior to me being voted by my peers as president, where we sit and we focus on what is the data showing us in terms of what is working and for whom, and what is not working and why. And Rochelle has been taking over that committee and has done a really great job. And so we need to continue to look at our data and figure out kind of where are our pockets of students that are doing what we want them to do, right, and making the gains and growth, and where are they not. And I can tell you now, looking at our data, there's sort of three main pockets, four really. Our students with disabilities continue to lag behind their non-disabled peers. Our students that are English language learners, our students of color, are continuing to struggle behind their equivalent peers. And we're also having difficulties with students that are at the upper end, not making the growth and gains that we would expect for our advanced learners. And so we need to be able to monitor these things as a board, keep our eyes on them, and then hold our administration responsible and accountable for being able to say, hey, if this isn't working, what now, what next? So what comes into the boardroom are things like additional classroom opportunities. We just voted on an AVID proposal last week, was that? So that we can help improve the achievement gap of our students that we have across the board, meaning that all means all, right? Regardless of what your identities are, regardless of what your kind of, life circumstances are, when you walk into the doors of Monona Grove, the expectation is that you should be making the growth and gains that you deserve to make and are entitled to make as a student.
Thank you. Question 3, and this is you again, Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
What specific steps would you take to improve equity and inclusion in our schools, particularly for students with disabilities, mental health needs, and diverse backgrounds?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just recognizing, and this is going to sound pretty basic, but that equity doesn't mean that everyone gets the same thing. Equity means that people get what they need when they need it, drawn down at the right time with the right resources in the right spot. And I think when we root ourselves in that as a sort of a core value or a North Star, then the rest of the decisions around that can follow. And so what that means is, if I'm a student who's struggling, let's say, with an acute mental health problem, right? I've got a mental health issue and problem, then that student should have access to student services and student service support within our building, as well as classroom supports in order to help them regulate their emotions, for example, right? If we're looking at our data, like I said earlier, and we see that our students of color are lagging behind their peers in terms of academic supports, that's an opportunity for us to lift up the hood on our own selves and go, hey, what's going on with our instruction and our curriculum? Does it feel relevant? Does it feel rigorous? Are we doing high expectations and high supports? But if we continue to keep that frame of right supports drawn down at the right time and the right way for kids, then those decisions flow and follow.
Thank you. Rochelle, you're next.
Okay, can you repeat the question again? just to
Yes.
make sure?
What specific steps would you take to improve equity and inclusion in our schools, particularly for students with disabilities, mental health needs, and diverse backgrounds?
So kind of circling back around to what I had said a little bit earlier about finding out where those gaps are in learning and identifying those with the data that we've been starting to collect probably in the last year and a half. The districts have been more aggressive about making sure that they are collecting information that then we can look back on and see where we're not meeting those needs and what can we do differently to try to meet those needs. There's also been, in addition to AVID being a curriculum that's been adopted by the district, SAIL is also another curriculum that's been in use, and that's helping the staff and specialists being able to work with children with autism and other different learners. So I think part of it is just being willing to always be pivoting and learning new skills and finding new ways to meet those kids where they're at, and having a good team to make sure that we are circling around and seeing, again, where those kids aren't getting what they need, and if it's social emotional, if it's learning dyslexia, which now we do have a new program in our public schools, Act 20, where we are really identifying those needs early on, so then we can give more support early on, so those kids are more able to keep up with their peers as they get older.
Thank you. And Nicole?
Could you repeat the question one
Yes.
more time? Thank
What
you.
specific steps would you take to improve equity and inclusion in our schools, particularly for students with disabilities, mental health needs, and diverse backgrounds?
So this is another one where we need a lot of data and checkpoints, and as well as early intervention is a step that I see is really important in this, because once we see a child lagging behind or not achieving at the same level, that's the time to intervene, not later. So the earlier we can intervene, the longer we can hold our cohorts together and support them through the whole process. And a lot of that requires not only the testing, but other sources of data and information from the schools to know what rate they're seeing troubles with, or not necessarily troubles, but challenges, so that we can make sure that the resources they have are appropriately sized for that school based on the outcomes of the students specific to each situation.
Thank you. Next question is Nicole, you first. Are you committed to keeping MG21 as an available option even with the funding challenges facing the district?
I am, yes. I've heard so many wonderful stories from MG21 in terms of the way it supports its students who maybe would struggle in a traditional setting. And their stories are incredibly moving, and it's clear that the work that MG21 does has a really significant impact, and continuing that is very important.
Thank you. Rochelle, you're next.
I am 100% committed to keeping MG21 as one of our schools in our district. My oldest child spent 8th grade at MG21 and had an amazing year, probably one of the happiest times I had seen him in middle school. The whole 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 8th grade was a great year at MG21. And I think the school provides a unique learning opportunity for students who may not be traditional students, but are able to really thrive and have an amazing experience while they're in our district. So yes, committed.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I love MG21. I think it's a great asset that we have in our community. And I think there are a couple of things about it that are really great. One, obviously, is its focus on project-based learning and its ability to really meet students where they're at and be able to help them meet important, rigorous milestones, but within a context that works, right? And they do also a ton of service learning. So just connection to the community, community partnerships, those things. I think the other piece about MG21 that I have really enjoyed getting to know them over my tenure on the board is they also take our feedback as a board very seriously. And so Rebecca Fox-Blair and the board will come and they'll present to us, right, kind of as part of their charter, how they're doing. And we'll ask them questions around kind of, you know, their achievement numbers, right, or kind of the disproportionality maybe within their student population. And they'll take that feedback very seriously. They'll talk about it with their staff. They'll talk about their students. They'll incorporate those changes and adjustments and then come back the next year, you know, with better, stronger, you know, more involved programming. And so to me, the relationship that we have between our board and MG21 is one of deep collaboration. I think they have an important service to our students here. And I think it's incredibly critical that we keep them here so long as they are interested in being part of our house and not building their own house.
Thank you. The next question is, how can we build more collaboration and community within our district between the two communities? And Rochelle, you're the first one.
I love this question.
Me too.
When my kids were transitioning from Winnqua to GDS, it was a rough transition, and I started thinking in my mind, why aren't we doing pen paling? Why aren't we doing different types of park days where we're doing field trips to each other's schools so we can start building relationships earlier on? So it really kind of solidifies that we are one district instead of two separate communities. And so I would like to see a lot more of that. And even in the last month or so, I've heard more conversations about that within the school board, and I'd like to see even more of that coming out in the next year. So people remember that we're better together than we are two separate communities. We can offer more programming. We can the students can have more extracurricular options just because of what the other community brings. So I think we can do better, and we should do better.
Thank you. Nicole?
I have a few similar thoughts, and my oldest is in 5th grade, and that's something I've been considering too, is it would be great to have the 5th graders in particular have a relationship across the district since they're all going to be together next year. And with that combination, it's a much larger school. So just having some familiarity there could really help bridge that gap. The other thing I see is our middle school and our high school, we are united on those. So maybe the opportunities are largely there because at some point, most kids are eventually going to hit the middle school and hit the high school and interact together, and that can really bring our families or communities together. And capitalizing on opportunities to host events at those that could maybe bring our district together would be a good opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, similar to Rochelle, I love this question, and I love it because it feels very much like a grown-up problem and not a kid problem. So I think I shared, I lived in Cottage Grove for a really long time. I live in Monona now. And when, my son is at Hartmeyer playing hockey, or my daughter's at Foundations dancing, like, no one talks about, like, are you a Winnqua kid or a Cottage Grove school kid or a Granite Ridge kid, right? They're just kids. They're kids that are within the Monona Grove School District, are very proud to be here. So to me, I think what we need to do is think about our mindsets as adults, and think about what feels like such a barrier, and then how do we break those down. I think this idea that Rochelle brought up, even though I know I'm not supposed to reference you directly, Rochelle, per the rules, but I think this idea that Rochelle brought up, and Nicole as well, around middle school and high school were already synthesized. At elementary school, let's capitalize on pen pals. Let's capitalize on cross field trips, right? Or opportunities. If Winnqua third graders are going to Aldo Leopold for a really cool snowshoeing experience, like, Cottage Grove third graders can do that too, right? So where are those opportunities for us as adults to get creative and think about these kids experience themselves in community all the time as a singular community? So where can we go, right? How can we open our minds to say, hey, pen paling, great example, right? How can we write letters back and forth? How can we have a meetup at the park, right? It's springtime now. We'll all go and meet up at, at a park in Cottage Grove or a park in Monona to go, hang out and play together. And so to me, this is about adults getting really creative about solutions that kids already are experiencing.
Thank you. Next question is, all other things being equal, whose voice do you feel will be your primary responsibility to represent? The students, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, or the taxpayers? And Elizabeth,
I
you're
get
first.
this one first. The answer is yes. Right? I mean, honestly, and it feels like a little bit of a cop-out answer. The board works for the community, but we work for the community on behalf of the benefits of our school district, right? So that means primarily, honestly, the youth that are there. When we talk about all things being equal, the people who don't have equal representation are our youth, right? We do have a student board representative, but otherwise, right, students don't usually email us or call us or come up to us in the middle of the day. So we are here in service of the community, but to support a strong community and strong academics and social emotional growth and good pride in our school district. And so the best way to do that is through deep collaboration with community, with family, with administrators, and with staff. And so to me, and this I think is what makes being on the board such a special, cool, unique experience, is that our job is to take the totality of all of those pieces and think about, okay, given that, what is best for kids that every day come and sit in our seats with an expectation that they're in a place that feels good, that feels like they can thrive and grow in ways that they want to. And to me, so long as we're centering that, then that is the equalizer there.
Thank you. Rochelle?
So it was teacher. Here,
It's everybody.
Would you like me to
Rochelle.
read it again?
Yeah, can you read it? Because I was going to say,
Yes.
I think I am all of those except administrator. And then, so it's kind of like what Elizabeth said. It's none of those work without all the other parts and pieces. And so, so you can, I think as being a school board member, I've really appreciated hearing from community members through emails and through coffee and all the different ways that you can give people a voice in decision making. I'm sorry, I've got a cough right now. Can I skip until?
Oh, take your time.
Oh, I don't want people to watch me cough.
Well,
It's like in my throat.
we're live. It's the
We'll just
hazards of the
move
job.
the camera. This will be the time where we pan the camera, Rochelle, so I have to watch you cough on screen.
Oh, I just went down the wrong way. Yeah, so I think the beauty of being in a small community or communities and representing local government is everybody is important. Your voices, your experience are important. The kids are my priority in a lot of ways, but But in order to have good instruction for the kids, then the teachers need to be supported and paid a fair wage. So then, okay, so that's really important. And then we're also getting our revenue right now, a lot of it from taxpayers. And you don't want to tax out all of the people who are paying for our school districts. So then they're really important. So it's all of those things are all part of the machine that is the public school system. And so being able to listen and support and make data-driven, smart decisions for long-term success is how I think about it.
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you do the question again? Thank
Yes. All other things being equal, whose voice do you feel will be your primary responsibility to represent? The students, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, or the taxpayers?
As an engineer, I did a lot of project management. And with that, there's always many stakeholders that we're considering and balancing. And you frequently have to identify the key pieces that support the overall decision. And so that's really what this is. And the key piece is the students. Everything else is set up in support of them. So if we don't do it from the lens of what works best for our students, you can have the other pieces working well, but if they're not supporting that, they're sort of irrelevant. So if we don't have enough funds to support the students, that's an issue. We have to get creative. Does that mean impacting the teachers? So they all play together so much, but you have to take it from the lens of the students.
Thank you. Next question. Our district is looking at tens of millions in currently unfunded expenses over the next 10 years. When evaluating cost-saving measures, where would you be most likely to support cuts? Staffing, programming, buildings, or other? We are at, I think we're at Rochelle.
I knew it. Yeah, the budget's a real challenge right now because expenditures are going up, the cost of living's going up. We all know that, we all feel it, and we're not getting as much support and help from the state. And so we are having to be creative and think about where we're at now. We got our fund balance up we're almost to 15%. So we're kind of sitting comfortably right now, but we also have schools that need work, and places that don't have programming. So we have to think about what is the best use of those places and spaces. And so I prioritize people and students over buildings, but because of those decisions are not light ones, I guess I also feel like using as much information and data as you can to make any decisions is important. And but if after getting all the information that we can possibly get and listen to the community, I prioritize people.
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you repeat it again?
Yes. Our district is looking at tens of millions in currently unfunded expenses over the next 10 years. When evaluating cost-saving measures, where would you be most likely to support cuts? Staffing, programming, buildings, or other?
Yeah, it's a very challenging situation that we have right now. Really what I want to see is good questions being asked to help make those decisions as we're from the board to the administration, because a lot of that information is held with them. And then once that decision is made, I don't see it being this one thing solves our problem. There's a lot of small tweaks, little efficiencies we can gain. We can look at things that seem insignificant in the scale of tens of millions of dollars that really do add up. When we have $100,000 here that we could maybe optimize, $600,000 here, things like consolidating the schools that was just done, really pulling the levers that we have available before we take steps towards more drastic measures. Thanks.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is that we have to look at all of it, right? There's about four pathways for schools to generate revenue, many of which are the ones that you named. And so then the question becomes not which one do you look at versus another, but what do you look at, when, and how, right? So it's about which levers you pull and draw down at what time. So there are a number of things that we've done already, right? So we have adjusted people. We have cut pretty significant FTE, particularly for district office staff and non-student facing staff. We have consolidated programming options, particularly at the high school, when we think about kind of which electives are we running and making sure that the classes that we are running are full, right? That we're not running classes that have, 5 or 6 kids in it because it's an interest area, right? So that's an example of sort of tweaking around the edges in terms of peoples and programs. But at the end of the day, what makes a school district are the people who are in it and the things that we do. So there's not too much that you want to do there without significant disruption in what the student experience is going to be and what the family experience is going to be. So given that, we have to look at other avenues as well. And so that looks like looking at our property portfolio, which is what we're doing right now, taking a look at all of our property portfolio in totality. We have a lot of property, not just thinking about the property here in Monona, but we've got a number of pieces of property in Cottage Grove as well, right? And thinking through kind of what can our community tolerate. We've been very lucky with our community passing 2 referendum for us over the last several years. And so, thinking about, we drew down that pathway already. Like, we did that, and I'm proud of it, right? We cut some FTE, and I'm proud of it, right? Those levers have been pulled for the moment. What other levels are there and available, and how can we pull them down before we start revisiting things that we've revisited already?
Thank you. Next question is, how do you propose the district raise funds to cover our 10-year capital project plan? And this is yours, Nicole.
So our capital project fund plan, there are really 2 pieces there. So as an engineer, I kind of did a deep dive on that, and there are a number of projects we really need to evaluate from a slightly different lens than they've been evaluated, and before we pull the trigger on them and make sure that they make sense in the timing that's currently in the 10-year plan. So with that, maybe there's some things we can move out or move down, or maybe some of the things are, there's multiple cost avenues for each of these things as well, because with every maintenance capital project for a building decision we have, there's different pathways you can go on that require different levels of efficiency gains and different things there. So we really need to have our administration make sure that they've looked at that to make sure that the items included in that plan are really the essential ones. And then from there, we need to again go back to optimizing our expenses, making sure we are operating efficiency to see what money we have available. And then once we have those 2 pieces, those really need to feed into any larger strategy going forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Oh, I'm next. I don't know why I thought we were going this way, even though we've been here for an hour and we've gone the other way. Will, did you start my clock with all my with all of my non sequiturs? That's fair. I think there are a number of things. I think folks need to understand that a capital plan is a projected types of projects that maybe need to happen in the future. And there's a reason we do that, right? Because deferred maintenance is really expensive. You can think about this as your house, right? If I have something that I know is going to break and I'm like, oh, that's probably going to break in 5 years, that may not be on the urgent list versus something that I know is literally currently broken and needs to get fixed, and or something that I go, I'm just going to kick this can down the road, and then all of a sudden we have something that's more catastrophic that costs more money. So the reason why we do a 10-year capital plan is for exactly that, so that we can think about what do we need to prioritize when, right? What is imminent, immediate, and important, particularly as it relates to safety, right? Things like roof and HVAC for good air quality, sprinkler systems, those kinds of things that are really important for school safety. And what are things that are, hey, this is something that we can keep our eye on, but we don't necessarily have to do that. So I think it's important for folks to understand that the 10-year capital plan doesn't necessarily mean these are things that we're spending money on today or need to spend money on, but it allows the board to do that forward thinking to say, okay, this is a priority that we need to fundraise for. Again, the ways in which to generate revenue for schools are fairly limited, right? We get money from the federal or state government, which, ain't looking so hot right now, but fingers crossed there for changes. We find some folks that are really interested in, let's say, building us a new athletic field or fixing our roof. We look for philanthropic donors, which, again, love. If anyone's out there that has money that they want to throw at us, happy to take your check. Thank you very much. We look at our assets, and then we look at our programs. And so those are literally the only ways in which we have to generate revenue. Or we get more kids come in, which would be amazing. And so those are the things that we're going to have to look at, not just for long-term capital planning, but also to meet our obligations around staff wages, class sizes, et cetera.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rochelle.
Can you repeat the question again, just so
How do you propose the district raise funds to cover our 10-year capital project plan?
Yeah, okay. When it's kind of going, I know I won't say going off of what you just said. But
That's so hard.
Looking, so the study that we had done of our buildings, I think, is really helpful to be able to see what's coming and prepare for it. And I think in the past we haven't always thought of it that way, where we kind of put money aside knowing things are coming and being able to anticipate that and keep our buildings with the programming in good working condition, so we don't have a big surprise where we're going to have to come up with a couple $1 million. So I think some of it is just really strategic planning and anticipating, and then also, we may have to look at some of those other branches of funds coming in and how best to use those in order to be able to provide the whole experience of a safe school. But this kind of goes back to the previous question, though, is and some of that revenue may come, or we may have to consider what we're doing with the spaces that don't hold kids, or that we can't or don't use at this time, and the best uses of those places and spaces. So, I'm out of time.
Thank you. You get to go first on this next question. So, what are your views on how schools should approach policies related to gender identity and biological sex in areas such as athletics, locker rooms, and bathrooms, while also considering fairness, safety, and inclusion for all students?
Oh, I got a tough one starting out. I would personally like to see this not be an issue, and so having bathrooms that aren't specific. I have a child who identifies as non-binary, and so having the bathrooms, instead of males, females, just bathroom stalls where people can use the bathroom, and doesn't matter how you identify. It's just you're doing being a human being. So I think that this topic has become a big hot button topic because of the political time we're living in. But personally, I feel like a happy person is the most important thing. Having a well-balanced, happy, safe youth is priority. And so when I think of how people identify, being respectful of it, yet thinking of them as a whole person, and how you identify as your gender is just a tiny part of the whole of you that makes you unique and special.
Thank you. Nicole? Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that when we talk about that gender identity, there are a lot of things that feel, at least to me, like they'd be fairly simple for us to do to support these students and these people in general. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words because I'm trying not to make any references here. I agree. That's just such a small piece of the identity of any person, any student in our district. And to have opportunities for them to be treated as their identity is a good thing. And a lot of these things, like I said, separate bathrooms, being willing to use the right pronouns, they are simple to implement. And so I'd like to see us do that.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things we know. We know that as a public school, we take all students in our boundaries, regardless of what their identities are, regardless of what their family values are, or kind of any other component that ours, right? We take kids as they are, as whole people. We also know that the foundation of learning for all students is making sure that you feel safe, that you feel supported, and you feel welcomed. Right? And that is true for all students, regardless of, how you identify in terms of gender identity or expression, how you identify in terms of sexual orientation or anything, racial identity, any of those things, right? Those are the foundational pieces we need. We also know when it comes to athletics, there is a very, very, very small number of individuals who identify as transgender that then go on to play like athletics or, are in professional or NCAA teams, right? So this idea that we've taken this like very, very, very like small example and then extrapolated that to the harm of other students, to the detriment of other students, and to the detriment of their staff, it's really disheartening and it's really frustrating. And so to me, from a policy perspective, it is in our mission, it's in our vision that we are an inclusive, equitable space. And that means all students, for who they are, for the totality of they are, every minute that they're within our walls.
Thank you. Next question is to you, Elizabeth, to start. In a recent survey, parents expressed concern about the amount of screen time during school hours, as well as screens being used for brain breaks during lunch and during indoor recess. What do you think can be done to limit the non-instructional reliance on screens in our elementary schools?
Yeah, so this has been a huge topic. We've talked about this in the boardroom, and I've had a number of conversations with community members and families about it. As a parent myself, I'm also concerned about our over-reliance on screens just as part of life. That would, and myself included in that. This is like pot kettle kind of situation when it comes to screen use. I think there are a number of things that we've done already, and we've got some places to go. So one is that we have released the Go Guardian app for parents so that parents can actually see in real time what kind of websites and apps and those kinds of things their students are accessing on their school-issued devices. Speaking for myself, when I opened mine up, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This isn't a website you're supposed to be on, child. Like, what are you doing? And so it prompted me to be able to have a really good conversation, as well as email the school and say, hey, by the way, this one's not blocked and it should be. So I think that as a first step is really important. I think the other thing, and this is just habits coming out of COVID, where so much of our instructional materials are available, and not only available, but expected. Like all of secondary curriculum, like you can't even get a book anymore. Like the book is extra. The curriculum itself is online. And so there's something to be said for how do we navigate in a world where we know that these things like paper and pencil just like is harder and harder to find. And so we've been talking with Rob and Angie, who are curriculum coordinators, around how do we take these opportunities that are available online and then move them to pencil and paper tasks as much as we can. How do we get books in the classroom as much as we can? We just had, I only got 15 seconds, but I'm excited about this. We had a meeting with the American Academy of Pediatrics. This was maybe 3 weeks ago. I work with them in my other personal, professional life, and their center on social media and mental health. We had them come down and talk to us about best practices, both in screen use for youth, but and in policy. And so in the next several months or so, you should be seeing some additional communication and changes around kind of our philosophy on screen use. So what is active, helpful, engaged time, and what is what's called sort of disruptive time, and then also around our policies as well. So staff have clear guardrails around, when to turn it on and when to turn it off.
Thank you. Rochelle.
I want to circle back around with what Elizabeth just said with the Go Guardian. This has been recently launched, and I think we have some work to do in communicating to families how best to use it so they can use it as a tool to be able to say, I can see my, talking to your own student about these are not places that you should be, and clearly you're not using your time accordingly to what the instruction's supposed to be. I also feel like we have opportunities to really think about, do we need every student in the classroom to have a Chromebook? Especially those younger grades. It used to be, before COVID, you'd have 3 Chromebooks, and that would just be one of the learning centers when the kids would all be working. So I would like to see us kind of really thinking deeply about the active learning, where it really is appropriate and where it's just something that we've gotten used to doing, and so we continue to do it. And I also really think we need to be thinking about, since screen addiction is a real thing, and I know adults have it as much as I just heard about boomers having screen addiction big time right now. And so just thinking about modeling for our students and really rethinking carefully about, is this the most appropriate way to use our instruction time?
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. In a recent survey, parents expressed concern about the amount of screen time during school hours, as well as screens being used for brain breaks, during lunch, and during indoor recess. What do you think can be done to limit the non-instructional reliance on screens in our elementary schools?
Yeah, this is a concern I have as well. And I hear echoed constantly from other parents, especially in the grade school. I'm sure it's a problem across all grades, but it presents differently based on the age. So when we're talking about our youngest learners, we do have those tactile materials for them to learn, and we do know that they learn best from human to human interactions, and we can really minimize them there. As they get older, they have to use some technology, whether it's because that's the format of our testing or that's the nature of a course, and also it's the way of life now. But finding the right time for these introductions so that the children have the right skills to use them, as well as intentionally teaching them the rules and limitations of that technology as they use it, and really just making sure our curriculum echoes the desire to have less technology. There's a fascinating, very long Senate hearing from January that went into a lot of detail on the risk of tech, both from a social media perspective, but also just from a general learning perspective. And I think from those experts, we can learn a lot and try and implement that as we make conscious decisions on how we use technology.
Thank you. Next question. There is a difference between the elementary schools within the district regarding how after-school and wraparound care are handled. What's your position on this as a candidate? Is there a specific change you would advocate for? This question is for you, Nicole.
Sure. I think we need to look closely at those differences and make sure that we're providing the same opportunities across the board. So with the wrap care, we know that it's provided in the school at Cottage Grove right now, and it's we know that it's funded through Fund 80 and there's revenue there. But what we don't know with certainty is if when we compare the scenario at Maywood, that's our wrap care in Monona, if we're really comparing it apples to apples, whether or not we've truly looked at every single cost that comes into the 4K rather than just the teachers and the supplies, because there's things that are more difficult to quantify. So making sure that we're looking at an apple-apples comparison to say that those are equitable or are not equitable so that we can address them is really the first step in making progress on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Rochelle.
So the wrap care at, when my kids were smaller, at Winnqua was offered just through the, I'm trying to think of the name of the, so it was outsourced, basically. They had somebody come into the cafeteria and they offered wrap care. Another parent and I saw an opportunity to offer enrichment classes after school, which would give parents a few more hours of their children being cared for, and then also an opportunity to bring in some enrichment with their regular classroom teachers if they would like to work with us. So we did this through the PTO, and we offered, I mean, it was a part-time job. I think I worked about 20 hours a week on doing programming, and made this, and we did it through the PTO, so the funds all actually went back to the school. But after we kind of stepped away from that, the city was willing to come in, and they started, because they saw that there was a need. So they came in and filled that need, which is fantastic. And then now having it expand and hear how much families love it and rely on it, it shows that it's an important program and needs to continue. But what happened at Cottage Grove is, from my understanding, they kind of created this program because there was an outsourced program that had been providing care that then went away. So they saw that need to support families, so they came in and provided that. It is a little unique that we have a community where the city is running the program, and the other community, the district, is running the program. I know it would be ideal if we could get Cottage Grove to eventually have their rec program come in and offer to take over that. So then the school district can just be focused then on the school day.
Thank
in
you.
the future.
Elizabeth.
I'd love to be out of the business of providing rep care and after-school care for our students. And I've shared this with leaders in Cottage Grove. I've shared this with pretty much anyone who ever asks me this question. I would love to see a community solution in Cottage Grove similar to the community solution we have here in Monona, for two reasons. One, because although we do the RAP program in Cottage Grove is funded through Fund 80, which is a community-based fund, which is outside revenue limits, self-contained, doesn't impact our operating budget. We do make a modest profit off of it, and I really like emphasis on the word modest, right? But not none. But at the end of the day, that actually only serves a really small percentage of our population, and we know that we have an aftercare problem in Cottage Grove writ large, right? Which we've been able to solve in Monona through great partnership with Parks and Rec. And so, to me, my point of view on this is that we are obligated and ought to be obligated and hold ourselves accountable for providing connections to families, because the school day is not conducive to a work day, right? They don't match up and they don't align. But finding community partnership in Cottage Grove to help us do that, to me, is the best pathway forward. And so again, anyone who is in leadership in Cottage Grove or running a community rec program in Cottage Grove, if you're interested in engaging with us around both 4K RAP, as well as just kind of aftercare writ large, please reach out to us, because we are very open to that discussion.
Thank you. Next question. Winnqua has been discussed a lot lately in the community. What are your thoughts on the building and how it serves students? This question goes to Rochelle.
I love Winnqua. I felt it was such a beautiful home for my children, and they even, like, when they went to the middle school, they'd be like, oh, I miss Winnqua, because of the fact that they were there from kindergarten until 5th grade. And so they had all these experiences and connections in this one building. So I know there are some challenges with it, and as the student population has grown, there have been some areas that have had a lot of use, and I know the halls are packed at different times of the day. So I do think that if we look at population trends, I think that this building will serve us well into the future. But if we do get a whole influx of new students, I think we also want to have a plan of what are the different things we can do to be able to keep this building in operation and serve our students best. But as of now, I feel like it might be a little bit tight, but the classrooms are pretty generous and the kids seem really happy there. And so I'd like to see it continue.
Thank you. Nicole.
Could you repeat it again?
Yes. Winnqua has been discussed a lot lately in the community. What are your thoughts on the building and how it serves students?
Yeah, I'd like to see the board or the administration, the board request or the administration do on their own a more detailed capacity study for Winnqua. We have a report that suggests two wildly different enrollment populations for it. One is 553 students, of which we are 11% higher, and the other is 719 students, which we only have room for 8% more students based on that from our current population. And that 719 doesn't consider how the school is actually used. And so that's my biggest concern there. We've got a special education hub at the front of the building that would be converted to a classroom to support that many students. We have a special, I don't know, what is the name for it? The sensory room that would also need to be converted in this scenario. And so it doesn't seem feasible that that number could be. So we need a strong number there so that we can determine how much space the school actually has. And then we want to make sure that that number still has a little bit of flexibility, because lots of things can happen. The apartments that are being built could have higher enrollment than we predict. Other changes can happen too that affect enrollment. It wasn't that long ago that 4K was added as a service at the school, and so things like that that are beyond population can have impacts on enrollment. So we need to make sure that our baseline for that is well set so that we can predict and anticipate how to deal with any future challenges in enrollment.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
So I think I might be in a unique position here between the three of us in that I have had students in literally all four of our elementary schools in the district. So Taylor Prairie, Cottage Grove School, Granite Ridge, and Winnqua. And they are all wonderful and very different. And I will say there is something about Winnqua that is incredibly special. And to me, what is rooted in that sort of specialness, what makes that special, is the fact that it is a neighborhood school that serves all of Monona Elementary School students. I will never forget last year when we transferred over, and my son was in 5th grade, we gave him the option, because 5th grader at Granite Ridge, like, you want to hang at Granite Ridge, or do you want to go to Winnqua? And he said, well, I want to switch to Winnqua because I want to make friends in my new neighborhood, right? Makes sense. It was the first time my kids were ever in a building at the same time together, and they will not be in the same building again until high school. And so for me, what I think about when I think about the capacity concerns with Winnqua is less about the fact that we may have to address capacity concerns, or we may have to address like population changes, or we may at some point just like want a new elementary school because new elementary schools are beautiful and fun and modern and great, right? To me, it's more about how do we think about that building as a community-based, neighborhood-based 4K5 school? And I know there's been some ideas in the community about like, well, we could maybe siphon off, right? We can siphon off, the early childhood, or we can siphon off the older students and maybe put them in a different spot in, Monona. And I would say we have lessons learned from Cottage Grove. We have lessons learned from our neighboring community. We have lessons learned from the research that the best place for our kids to be, when possible, is 4K5 all in the same space. So my challenge is less about like, maybe there are capacity concerns. Let's figure out how to do that while maintaining the integrity of the place that we love so, so, so much.
Thank you. Next question. What non-school board experience do you have that makes you qualified to serve as a board member? This question goes to you, Elizabeth.
Bye. I was just saying bye to people. Thank you for coming. I am like an education policy nerd and wonk. This is like what I do. This is what I think about all day. Like I had shared earlier, I've worked as a practitioner in schools. So I've been a paraeducator. I've been a school psychologist. I worked at DPI for a number of years as a school psychology consultant. And now I do policy and system change at the national level for schools and districts kind of all over the U.S. And states. I work with state education agencies. And like I said, I said this at the beginning, but I really mean it. I love the work. I love the work. I love doing the work, even when it's hard, even when it's weird, even when it's wonky, even when people are mad at you. And so to me, those are the experiences that I bring. I also have a number of leadership experiences. I've ran big teams before. I've worked, kind of more in a consultant kind of way with a variety of stakeholders. And so I think one thing that I bring that's an intangible is I'm a good listener. I can listen. I can hear what people's points of view are and perspective. I can admit when I'm wrong, which is like, often, right? And then be able to adjust and pivot my opinions. And that to me is what makes a solid board member. And that's why I'm running again.
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you repeat it again?
Yes. What non-school board experience do you have that makes you qualified to serve as a board member?
Sure. All of my experience is non-school board. Yes. Part of why I'm running is I value our school board and respect the work that everyone there's done, including the other two people sitting here with me tonight. But I, as a little bit of an outsider, I'm an engineer, and so I'm really interested in bringing a different viewpoint. Because in my opinion, lots of viewpoints means lots of different considerations and a better balance of priorities. So I really want to take my slightly different experience as an engineer and apply it there. And then specifically within that, I was largely within engineering, what we call a project engineer, which means I'm largely a project manager. So I'm familiar with the challenges of managing a budget and tracking to that budget, and also trying to balance multiple people's priorities as well as interpret what those priorities really mean. Because it's easy to ask for a lot, but kind of boring down to understand what the real ask is or what the real need is. It requires a lot of critical thinking and a lot of communication, and I'd like to use those skills that I have from engineering in this role. Thanks.
Thank you. Rochelle?
I think some of the skills that I bring to the board are, I'm a creative thinker. I'm an artist. When I am now an artist all the time. And I'm also dyslexic, so I kind of come at things with sometimes an unusual lens, which I think is beneficial to have the ability to kind of think differently about things. And then my thinking is flexible. So when it comes to, and even just in the last few years, I've really appreciate hearing from all the different voices and points of view before I decide anything or make any decisions, because I recognize my limits as one individual, and so having and listening and building relationships with other people to kind of make sure I hear from their perspective before I have any solid opinions or decisions based on any one thing.
Thank you. We're going to continue. This is some of the questions that were submitted in years past.
Got through all of
and
them.
Wow.
We're going back to Elizabeth. And what is your view on school choice?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think we've seen in general over the last decade or so, but particularly over the last couple of years, that our public education system is at risk. It's at risk of losing funding. It's at risk of losing students. And so for me, while I appreciate the idea that families need to make choices that work best for their kids, right, and make sure they have spaces and places, at the end of the day, public education is the epitome and seat of democracy. And I really, truly believe that, right? I really believe in the value of public education. I really believe in the spirit of a better educated populace is then a better educated and better and more productive community writ large, right? A more empathetic community writ large. And I think what we've seen is that, kind of movement to school vouchers and those things have really impacted our budget, not just from a direct line perspective, which they have, but also for every child that chooses a different district and that's not us, right, we lose revenue there too. And so for me, our big goal here is that school choice is here to stay. Vouchers are moving the way that they're moving, both at the state level and the federal level. So what does it mean for us to be a destination district? What does it mean for us to have such a high value proposition that everyone is like, where I want to go? I want to go to the Monona Grove School District, and I want to bang on the door and ask, how can I move in? How can I get here? What are our open enrollment policies so that I can be there? So to me, preserving the integrity of our public school system and also making sure that our value proposition is such so that families are going, that's where I want my kids to be.
Thank you. Rochelle?
Yeah, I think public schools are schools for everyone, no matter how you, what religion you are, what ethnicity you are, what if you're socioeconomic situation, if you have special needs, the school for everyone. And so I think when we have these public schools that take everyone and everyone's welcome and then responsible to give them what they need to be able to do whatever is next, I think that it's one of the most important things. And when you look at vouchers or school choice and students or families choose to send their kids other places and those funds go with them, it changes the community dynamic within our schools because you just don't have the diversity of that whole community in one learning opportunity or one learning space. And also those, depending which schools they go to, those schools may not have to provide services that we still do within our public schools without those dollars. So I think choice is a great thing, but I think first we have to fund our public schools, and that should be priority.
Thank you. Nicole?
My viewpoint's not terribly different. I think that public dollars are meant to be spent publicly, and so the voucher program unfortunately pulls away from that opportunity. And I can't imagine, I mean, I've been this person before, but I can't imagine now that I have kids in the school district, being a resident without children and knowing that your dollars are leaving the area that you're paying it for, especially. So I really want to find a way to keep those dollars supporting our students. I have no problem with families choosing to go elsewhere, but the funding is really a challenge, and the public dollars are meant to be public. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is, in your opinion, what is the most important function of a school board member? And I think we are at Nicole.
The most important function is, well, the board's role is really oversight and policy. And so acting through that lens to ensure that the decision-making is robust and well-informed and drives us in the right direction while holding that student-centered lens to make sure that everything ultimately is benefiting our students is the role of the board. So we have to advocate for our students' needs, and we have to think long-term to make sure that changes today make sense as we go through time so that we have a lot of stability with those decisions as well. And keeping all of that, again, student-centered as we go forward.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, the most important role we have is the only role we have, which is governance, right? Which means a variety of different things. So, you know, to Nikki's point, that is around policy and accountability around policy. That's around ensuring that our administrator, particularly our district administrator, who's responsible for ensuring operations, is doing her job and doing it well. Pleased that Dr. Frederick is fantastic and has transitioned very beautifully, but that's an important part of our role. Important part of our role is managing the financial situation. And then I think a really important part of our role is connecting with and educating our community, so parents and community writ large, on, you know, what is important to have the pulse of what's going on in the community, what's bubbling up for them, but also to help educate and set guardrails on, hey, this is a really great question. That's actually not a policy question. This is a practice question, right? This is an implementation question, and here's where you go, and how can I help you connect that way, right? What questions do you have, and how can I help facilitate that for you? And I think so we need to kind of keep those pieces in mind, and I'm because I have 20 seconds left, I'm really proud of our board currently. So I think I shared earlier, I was elected by my peers 2 years ago, and then again last year to be board president. And I think that we have really worked hard on improving our governance, improving the way that we ask questions, how we engage with each other, how we engage with the community. And so for me, regardless of what the board makeup is, kind of come April, my hope would be that we continue on that path and trajectory to keep a high expectation and high quality governance so that our administrators and staff can do their jobs while we're keeping our eyes on all the balls that are the most important.
Thank you. Rochelle?
You took my answer.
Oh, that's just like that's what she said.
Yeah, the role of the board is the governance, and just like it's not a straightforward. It's a complicated machine with lots of pieces, and I think definitely again that local government component where I live in the community. I see people in the stores. I see people at show choir events, and so having this connection with local neighbors and even students. My son's one of his classmates asked if he could sit down with me and talk about the school board. And so kind of being that bridge between what's happening within the community, hearing thoughts and concerns when it comes to your own students, or not knowing even how to navigate, because sometimes the work we do isn't even school board related. Instead, it's just kind of listening and then giving some resources. So I think there's lots of branches to the role of being a school board member, but primarily it is oversight and making sure that we are being fiscally responsible while we're doing the best for our students and our community members and our families and teachers and faculty and support staff. Yeah.
Thank you. We just have one more question.
Wow.
I know. This question is, in your opinion, what key performance indicators would demonstrate a successful and effective school board? And this goes to you, Rochelle.
I think one thing that, and Elizabeth touched on this, that's really important about an effective school board is for people to get along and to listen. And I guess you don't even have to get along where you're in besties, but to be able to be respectful to each other, be able to really listen and really hear what people have to say, and likewise have them do that work for you. And then I also think being another part of being on the school board is serving in these different committees and then getting to kind of really go in a little bit deeper in the work with your the other people on the board, which can be really rewarding because you're kind of really becoming quite knowledgeable in these areas that, in my case, finance and operation, I didn't know I enjoyed learning about until I was sitting on that committee, and then getting to kind of share that experience with other board members has been pretty rewarding.
Thank you. Nicole?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. In your opinion, what key performance indicators would demonstrate a successful and effective school board?
There's a couple. What I'd really like to see in an effective school board is, and I've seen a little bit of a shift there, but really thoughtful, engaging discussion. And I know that some of that's set based on our administration's willingness to answer questions and other details, but we can't make good decisions without good discussion, because that really allows us to expand our viewpoints. Having high level of engagement with the school board from our community at large, and that's largely done through public comments or emails and other things, and knowing that those responses are happening. And each of those leads into decisions that do weigh the community's concerns, and that's really what would make for an effective school board.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so we do have KPIs. They exist, and you can look at them. For those of you who've been following the board for a while, you get real deep in this. We do our board most of our board business by committee, so we have a number of committees. All of those committees have what we call scorecards, right? So there's certain particular key performance indicators that we're tracking on that we're expected to hit, and we're watching over time. And so you can look at that from teaching, learning, and equity. We have it with personnel. We have it with F&O. You have a scorecard for policy as well. So that's kind of that. I think then the question is, how does that translate into like what the public sees, right? Because a lot of that is like wonky, behind the scenes, in committee, which anyone is welcome to come to, but that's not where we get most of our folks. And so I think Rochelle and Nicole really hit it, which is one, what is the health of the board as it relates to how folks interact with each other at board meetings? So for those of you who've been following the board for a long time, you will recall there was a time in which not all the board members were nice to each other, right? They weren't all getting along and able to engage in really good, meaningful conversation because they were like too busy being mad and snippy about it with each other about other things, right? And that's just how that was going. And so part of what we've been trying to build is this idea of thoughtful, engaged, respectful dialogue where everybody has the opportunity to talk. So one thing that I've tried to institute based on feedback through my thing, and I know I'm over time, Will, but I'm going to go for a couple more minutes, so sorry, Will, is this idea that, like, if I haven't heard anyone talk in a while, like, I'll be like, hey, Rochelle, do you have anything to say here? You know, Nicole, if you're on the board, hey, Nicole, do you have anything to say here, anything to add? I also think, and this is actually a KPI that we should start measuring, and I'll talk with Katie about this, community engagement, so number of public speakers and comments that we have is a really good KPI for us. People who are actually watching the meetings and showing up, even when they're unhappy with us, if you're there, you're engaged. If you email us, you're engaged. If you sit and you have coffee with me or any member of the board, you're engaged. And so that to me means that we're like a healthy, functioning, transparent, communicative board because you know what's going on and you know enough to be mad about it and show up. And so, like, to me, that is a KPI that we actually need to write now that I'm thinking
Thank
about
you.
it. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, that concludes the question section of our
question
forum.
Is there another part of it?
There's a closing statement.
Closing statement.
Oh.
Yes. Closing statements.
This is the talent portion, Rochelle.
Did
I
everyone
didn't
bring their
prepare
tambourines?
anything. Right,
Yes.
Exactly.
So we will start with Nicole.
I'm excited to possibly contribute to the board, either directly as a board member in the future or indirectly as I continue to come and speak to you. And I really think that my experience would be an asset to the board. So again, in my work, I'm an engineer and a project manager. And with that, I manage complex projects with long lifetimes, tight budgets, and lots of competing priorities and stakeholders. And because of that, I'm used to looking at data carefully, asking good questions, and thinking through trade-offs and long-term impacts as we make decisions. And those are skills that translate right into the board work. The board's primary role is to provide oversight, which requires asking the right questions and making sure decisions are thoughtful, transparent, and sustainable over time. I'm also a parent in the district, and I see firsthand how much our teachers and staff do for our kids and how important stable, well-supported environments are for student success. I'm involved in our community through Girl Scouts and youth coaching and also Cub Scouts, and that gives me another avenue in which I connect with our general population and see some of the things that they have concerns about, as well as gives me experience managing smaller scale public projects. Between those two things, I feel I bring a professional skill set that would be a benefit to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Elizabeth.
Yeah, so thank you again for hosting this, for having it, for coming and watching up in the ether tube somewhere. I think for me, what I want to say in my closing remarks is, like I shared earlier, I really do love the work, and I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do over my last sort of 2 tenures on the board. So we moved Teaching and Learning and Equity Committee to really being focused on looking at our student data and really looking at equity within our teaching and learning practices and moving forward on high quality instructional materials. We have moved the needle on mental health and student services supports in a really meaningful way. We've got some great grant opportunities right now. We have had a successful transition of a new superintendent and a board culture that I think is one where we are having really good, meaningful discussion about really hard topics, and community members that are coming forth saying, hey, I read this, I saw this, I have questions, I don't get it, which means that we're communicating out in ways that people understand and are effective. So to me, I'm proud of the work, and there's still a lot of work to do. And so I'd be very, very happy and proud to be able to continue the work should folks decide to vote for me. So thanks.
Thank you. Rochelle.
So the one thing that joining any starting any new job, or in this case, joining the board, I found there's a lot to learn. There's a steep learning curve to all the layers of how our district works, to start to even build relationships with some of the administrations that are handling different things. And so it takes a while to get your footing. And I have felt like these first 3 years of being on the board has been fantastic for me to kind of have a much deeper understanding of how best I can work within the board and help to also communicate to the community and be a good bridge as to what work the board is doing, and then bring it to the like I said, the community at large as best as I can. And I also feel like I've been on chairing the TLE the last, I think, 2 years. I've been chairing it. And I'm really excited to see all the good work that's happening there. And I'm hoping, if I were lucky enough to be elected again, to be able to continue that work and see that our students are getting an excellent education while they're here in the district, and also giving them the skills they need to whatever they do in the future. And my time's up.
Your time is up. Thank you so much to the candidates, to Rochelle, Nicole, and Elizabeth. Thank you to everyone in the community, people who are tuning in, and to the people who came in person. The voting is April 7th. If you need more information on candidates for this election and any others, you can go to vote411.org. And we also the League of Women Voters of Dane County would like to invite everyone to join. We let men in as well. And that's it. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.